Moving on, it's important to kind of look at the pendulum swing. Generations are raised, right? So when we look at, and each generation tries to improve their experience. They want better for their children than they had for themselves. So traditionalists raised Xers, boomers raised millennials. And there's a great relationship you can harness in your work environments right there because they already know each other. And they actually have a very positive relationship with each other. Millennials like and respect their parents. Xers are like, talk to the hand, mom. Like, they just aren't so connected. But millennials and boomers have a connection. And then Xers are raising the homeland security, and that has yet to, generation, that has yet to be, we don't know what they're going to turn out like yet. I want to speak a little bit to this boomer-millennial connection because it relates to some of the groups that you're working with. So boomers as parents wanted to create a home where the child had a voice. They were raised with harsh punishments, child is seen but not heard, not a whole lot of family importance, and so they wanted to compensate for that. They also wanted a relationship with their child that was based on friendship and intimacy. Lots of close connections, lots of close communication, and that really plays out. You know, when millennials hit the college campuses, we used to like to separate the parents and the students, right? Because the generation before them really wanted that. Xers did. Not only did parents want to be involved in their students' college experience, the children wanted them to be. And so we were now saying, no, the parents need to go over here. And the students were like, no, I want my mom helping me pick classes. I want my dad to do this with me. So colleges have already had to make this transition. Now workplaces are. It is not uncommon for boomers to go with their millennials to job interviews. Boomer parents have called in to the boss and said, I want to talk to you about my child's performance review. Okay? It happened to me in college. As a faculty member, I had boomer parents saying, my daughter's really struggling with an assignment in your class. Can I talk to you about it so I can help her? Whoa, okay. And as an Xer, right, think about Xers, independent, self-starter. I found myself being very judgmental of both generations, right? Like, grow up, kid, and mom, stop meddling. And yet, what I needed to understand is sociologically, this is a phenomenon that's very different than the worldview I grew up with. So Xers can be kind of judgmental of the two groups, and yet the two groups have a way of working together. So creates fun dynamics. The other things going on here is that boomers had a lack of trust in institutions, so got involved, overly so. I talked about that before. They've also wanted to ensure their child's success, so have been very active in directing their student in terms of co-curricular activities, internships, jobs, college choices, wanting to set them up for success. And again, the student wanting that kind of guidance. And then they wanted their student to have good self-esteem, so that idea of awards for everything. So what that has done for millennials is that the researchers, in fact, Howe and Strauss have written an entire book just on millennials, and the research that they discovered were these were the key traits. Because they were the most planned for generation and this dynamic was really all about them, they have a sense of being very special. And they've been treated very special. And when they went to college, they wanted college to treat them special, and now that they're in the workforce, they want that sense of specialness to continue. Sheltered, they were protected from, you know, the thing that happened with boomers is they didn't just protect them from physical harm, they started to protect them from an emotional harm. So boomers as a generation are likely to call into the school and say, my student just failed your assignment, can we get a do-over? Can they create a makeup assignment? And what has happened is that as a generation, millennials are the most emotionally fragile. Psychologists are saying that they have greater issues with anxiety and depression and sense of self. So while we built up their self-esteems, it was based on lots of ribbons. It wasn't based on a real sense of trying and accomplishing. And so we're seeing this unintended consequence of it in the real world. Okay? Team-oriented, grew up with a lot of group work in school. They like working in teams. Pressured, most pressured generation in terms of achieving, and so they have felt an incredible amount of pressure to try to do well all the time, and that has played out in those things I was talking about, and they have achieved. On paper, they're the most achieving generation so far, highest GPA, most awards, most accomplishments. The question is, if we gave awards for everything, are those awards really valid? And how is that sorting itself out? This plays out in college a lot because college is the first environment they hit where they're getting a new sense of self. and that's really can be dramatic. But when they move into the workforce, it happens again, right? And then conventional. Interestingly, this generation has more traditional views in some ways, but not in ways that we would expect. So for example, millennials have a high value on bringing spirituality into their life. Not organized religion, but a sense of spirituality. And yet, with that high in their priorities, they're very comfortable with gay marriage. All the data shows that. And they'll put together things that other generations will be like, those things don't go together. And they're like, yeah, they do. I pick and sort and create the set of values that really works for me. While they believe that women can accomplish anything, they have more traditional gender values in terms of how men and women should look. So we're seeing kind of girls being girlier and boys being manlier at a younger age than we did with other generations. So interesting stuff. Again, maybe true for you, people you know or not. Confident. I love this chart because I think it speaks to the wonderful optimism and hopefulness that millennials have. So they did a study of college students and asked them do you think you're science literate? 84% said they were. I can tell you that that's not true. Okay, 84% of college students are not science literate. That someone in their generation will be the next Bill Gates, 86%. Mark Zuckerberg already happened, right? But they personally know such a person, 66%, that they are that person, 25%.
Wow.
Okay? Millennials are incredibly confident because they were told to be. And on one hand, we want to harness that optimism. They have incredible faith in their ability to change the world. And gosh darn it, some of them actually are, right? Because they come from such a place of, yeah, I got this. So it's an interesting thing to think about. But then, that front edge of millennials, September 11th happened, decade of war, recession, depression, living at home. And this says, same here, it's an unemployment application. So the promise of graduating from college and all those things that they did to set up themselves for success are falling apart. So we have the front edge of millennials are kind of primed to also become cynical. We'll see what happens, right? Okay, backside of your sheet is goals and work ethics. So what the research says about how the generations show up in the work environment. This research is based on businesses and corporations. It's not specific to nonprofits. So in your own head, you're going to have to kind of tinker with that. How are you doing so far?
Good.
Y'all good? Okay. All right, so in terms of goals and work ethic, boomers really identify with their job. They would say, I am my work. Xers work to live. They want to have a very engaged life with their family. Their job pays for the life that they want to have. And millennials, work is part of their lifestyle. It's one of the many things that they do. Career goals, boomers want to build a stellar career, really hone their expertise and mastery, and achieve all the accomplishments of that, the title, the salary, those markers that are meaningful to them. Xers don't trust in having a long-term job or a career within a certain field. They like to keep their options open and develop a lot of skills so that they can move around. And millennials want to build parallel careers. They want to continue to explore their interests, set themselves up for a few potential things, maybe hop between them, and they want help doing that. They're more likely in the first third of their career, just age-wise. And then work ethic, boomers put in your long hours, work hard, pay your dues, and then the rewards will come. Xers are like, can't count on rewards coming. I'm going to be a self-starter. I'm going to take initiative. I'm going to have a couple other irons in the fire in case this doesn't work out. And millennials, if I do what's expected, if I show up to my job for the first couple years and I do what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to get promoted. And they're going to see how amazing I am. And so they expect rewards to come quickly, and on top of it, they want it to be fun. So buy some soup, and that will happen. Motivation and rewards. Again, this is what the research indicates, broad brushstrokes. Boomers are motivated by making an impact. They like to be involved in decision-making. They want to be empowered in that way. They like to have challenging goals. They really still want professional development opportunities, especially because they're staying in their careers longer. And they want to be rewarded for results. If I do the job, I want to see a bonus or time off or something. Xers really like room to challenge the status quo. Xers really value freedom and autonomy. They want to work remotely. They want to be able to create their own work schedule, share jobs, those kinds of creative work solutions. They like to be developed as well, and they want to be rewarded for their independent thinking. They're your natural problem solvers in your organization. And then millennials also want to make a difference. So boomers and millennials share this. Millennials do really well if you give them clear goals and expectations. As an educator with millennials, my syllabus got longer and longer and longer because they really wanted to know more details, more parameters, what distinguishes an A from a B from a C. I want to do A work. Tell me exactly what it will take to do A work. Same thing showing up professionally. They want clear guidance. How am I being measured? How often am I being measured? What are you expecting of me? So for some managers, millennials can feel a little high maintenance at the beginning, and they are. But once you get them oriented, then they can work on their own. But you have to spend more time up front. They love intellectual projects. They love working with technology. They like to explore options, and they want to be rewarded for their improvement. When they demonstrate increasing competence, they want that to be noticed. Styles and preferences. Boomers are team players in terms of interactive style. They enjoy meetings and working in groups. Now, that's not to say a boomer loves a meeting, okay? But boomers find that working interactively and having opportunities to communicate is a pleasant style for them. Xers are entrepreneurs. They'd rather have a lot of autonomy. We don't need to meet so much. Let me just do my own thing. And millennials are really participative. They like collaborating, and they're very comfortable collaborating with people of different ages, and they're very comfortable with people older than themselves. Communication, boomers, they're not that they use these now, but they grew up with touch tone phones. Their philosophy is, my work is my life, so yes, you can call me anytime. Xers grew up with personal computers, and they're like, I want to separate my work and my personal life. You can call or email me, but only when I'm working. And millennials, smartphones, they really kind of merge their work and their personal life, so they're fine being contacted on the weekend or on the evening, but they also want to roll in at 10:30 on a Tuesday because they did do a little bit of something on Saturday. So it's much more amorphous. And then is this resonating for you guys?
Yeah.
Not at all. And then in terms of feedback, boomers prefer just occasional feedback, but they like it in person. Xers really like things in person because of that connection place. And millennials really want continuous feedback accessible to them. And I work in HR, and in fact, all of the performance management systems are completely overhauling themselves right now. We're about to institute one where literally you not only set up your goals for the year, both manager and employee can log into it, see it at any time, and put things in there. And there's even a feature where if David was my boss, he could use his phone to take a picture of me giving this presentation, upload it while he's sitting here to my performance review file, and say, way to go, Britt, you did a great job. And when I get home and I log on to my computer, if I took a break right now, I could go, oh, dude, David's liking my presentation. How cool is that? So that's the way of performance review systems. And for those of you who work in small nonprofits, that may seem out of your reach right now, but even the less expensive options are moving in this direction. So again, harnessing that comfort with online and immediate. And then finally, leadership traits. We have more research about how boomers and Xers lead. Millennials are just starting to really show their leadership styles, but we're making some educated guesses based on their traits. Boomers lead by setting a vision of the future. They like to establish a clear direction for where the organization is headed. They focus on the big picture, and they really empower the team to work out the details. They seek and maximize opportunities, and they like to be authentic and very democratic when they lead. They like to seek voices and input. Xers lead by challenging the status quo. They're always looking for how can this be done better and coming up with solutions. They minimize organizational politics. Again, from that cynicism, like, really, people, we don't need to spend time on this. Let's just focus on getting the job done. They like to create loose framework and guidelines because they themselves want a lot of freedom, so they give a lot of freedom. They want open and informal communication, and how they want to be seen and how they approach leadership as being very fair-minded and credible. And then finally, millennials are going to set broad and challenging targets, really focused on how does this make a difference in the world. Millennials are really focused on a purpose. That's great for you guys in nonprofit work because you really are changing something, right? But if you worked at a company that you make valves for bathroom sinks, right, it'd be a little harder to get people excited about the difference they're making in the world. So that's going to fluctuate. Millennials like to create flat reporting structures. Again, they like to have lots of access, and so they'll create lots of access. They'll allow a lot of individual freedom. They'll be very active and engaging because that's how they were treated. and they'll do the same. And they like to be creative and inclusive in their leadership style. So, broad brushstrokes. I think this is another fun way to capture this, but I don't know if you guys saw this. Jon Stewart and Bill O'Reilly, right before the election, had their own debate. And if you haven't watched it, watch it. I learned more about our country and government watching them than I did any of our political candidates. But when they started the debate, Jon Stewart said to Bill O'Reilly, right now, your audience is calling my audience to try to figure out how to download this debate. And it's true, because boomers and millennials have this relationship. And so the parents were probably on the phone being like, I'm trying to download this. And then they were walking their mom or dad through, okay, go here, click there. And so there's this natural kind of co-teaching that happens. It's kind of fun. All right, time for you to take all that. That was a lot. Process that for a few minutes. How does that relate to your organization? You have the questions on your handout. Where is it a match? Where does it disconnect for you? What's useful? What do you want to kind of set aside as not being relevant to your organization right now? I'm going to give you 5 minutes.
It's like our parents, too. Mine are boomers, but they're, I mean, you know, I'm always getting some sort of phone call regarding technology. Sure. They don't have it fully capacity, which is fine, to really navigate to new technology in general. Just shows, definitely see, yes, there's some parts I'm sorry. Yeah, so, you know, taking this it's just like astrology, you have to take that as far as categories.
I'm a big fan of
they're not stereotypically that
and I have noticed I think that's
If I can ask, what are your Gen X? I've always loved it. I'm with my family, so that culture experience had a dramatic effect.
my mom is a
Oh, silent, yeah. It's silent tradition. It's silent. I thought I was like my mom was 65, but I thought, you know, because our parents are in the tradition from what I think. Well, anyway, they're very close. I'm not dealing with basically like how much.
All right, take a minute to wrap up.
You say this is available online. Is it something we can download ourselves, or is it just available for viewing?
It'll be, I will have the PDF for you to download, and then you can also watch the video and hear me speaking. So either one. You'll be able to get the PowerPoint as well as hear me give this presentation. All right, let's pull you back together. Okay, I'm glad there's so many good conversations happening. So let's focus. Thank you. I'm glad there's good conversations. I really intended this presentation to be a conversation starter, not that it's going to wrap all up for you today. But I do think that this conversation is a great one to be having both internally in your organization, with your peers and other organizations. And I guess the first thing that I would say is, as you're considering your question of how do we continue to harness new communities and communicate with them, use this as a starting place, but I'm a big believer in the focus group. Because if you're trying to harness the Santa Barbara community for our local hospital, our community is pretty unique in terms of national demographics, but pull together a cross-section of the group you're trying to reach and talk to them about what they value. That's the time we're telling you to stop talking. So use a focus group approach, because that's going to give you the information you need to really anchor this in the communities and the issues that you feel so most passionate about. Let's just hear from a couple of you what came up in your conversations.
How this resonates is true in a lot of ways. How the millennials can have their phone in front of them, be on the computer, one earbud in, listening to music, and thinking that's normal. This is how I operate from morning till not a lot of boundaries in terms of this is work time, this is not work time. I'm just gonna flow, and I want freedom.
Yep. And interestingly, surveys have shown that boomers find that laptops and cell phones in a meeting is distracting and somewhat disrespectful, actually, that it indicates you're not paying attention. And yet that's not where millennials are coming from, and yet that's a disconnect a little bit. So how we interpret these behaviors matters. This group here.
Actually, at this point. I'm just kidding. No, she did mention, and it's true, how children that we're having are being raised by Generation X parents, because we have to work, and how there's that cross between generations and the influence that those generations have on that child's upbringing.
Right, because grandmas and grandpas are in the mix too, right?
Because they're not letting go.
Because they're not letting go.
No, but also I was thinking, like, as generation, as the new homeland generation, are they being raised by two different cohorts? Like,
well, it depends.
Because now millennials, I mean, there's no, like, you have to get married,
right.
You have to do this.
Exactly. So this whole thing of generational research is being kind of messed with right now, because you can be 20 and have a baby, you can be, it's been done, 60 and have a baby.
Right.
And so who's raising who is getting a little fuzzier. And because grandparents now can be involved, their views are in the mix as well. And I love, like, when I watch what movies are coming out. Did y'all see the preview for the movie of Barbara Streisand going on a road trip with her son? Totally this issue, okay? A recent one that also came out about the grandparents having opinions about how the parents were parenting, and then the parents went away for a weekend and they had to parent, and then hilarity ensued. But yeah, lots of movies are kind of approaching these issues right now, because we have a whole lot of generations in the mix, and we do not see things the same way. And yet there's really awesome places of connection. Your comment.
Yeah, so it's a personal reflection, is just geographical distribution that occurred Boomer and Gen X, where people like my brothers and sisters are scattered around the country. Older people are in homes. It's like that's a huge change. When I was a kid, everyone in the extended family lived in the same geographical area. We went to visit grandma, once a week for sure. And that's
coming
not
back
happening
with-
anymore.
Well, millennials are living closer to their families
No,
than,
that'd be interesting.
than previous generations. One last comment. I know there's tons of things we could say, but
Oh, I just think it's interesting because the millennials graduated college in 2008 because that's right around then when the recession happened. So many of them struggled to find a job. So I am interested to see how that's going to shift
yeah.
later down the road. And so it's interesting because I think already that shift about credit is really shifting in that generation, the top part.
Absolutely, absolutely. So generations continue to be shaped, and I think my prediction is that millennial generation will actually have a split personality. The older group, having been raised with so much optimism and hope, and then having such a sharp fall, are going to have a different flavor than the younger generation that corrected when they were younger in their formative years. If that makes sense. If I was a cartoonist, this is the cartoon that I would write. Boomer dad goes to work and says to his boomer coworker, "God, these millennials drive me crazy. Like, they ask me for direction for everything. Why don't they take some initiative?" And then he drives home to his 25-year-old daughter who's living with him saying, "Honey, I worked on your resume today and submitted it for a couple jobs. Don't forget to wash your car." So, for those of you who are boomers that are annoyed with the millennials, I just have to say you made your bed and now it's time to lie in it, because they are reflecting some of the wonderful parenting that you did, and you never exited the attachment parenting strategy. All right, so let's turn our attention to the nonprofit sector.